John Jones. After watching your recent excellent video about mind control, I have to ask, how did you become a Rush Limbaugh ditto head, and what finally cured you of this condition? Rush Limbaugh came into some real prominence in my life, and I think it was in the early 90s. He'd written a couple books. I think he got a TV show from a radio program that he had done, and which he went, which he I think always did and went back to after the TV thing kind of came and went. He was a bit of a fad, in other words, in the early 90s, and I got on that train and I was riding it pretty hard, and I thought Rush knew what he was doing and knew what he was talking about, and I found him kind of funny. He presented in a very entertaining way, and talk radio and politically minded or social value minded commentary was not something I was watching mainstream media for, because I didn't really have the time, or TV even. Well, I was a staff member in Santa Barbara, and so I was broke. I was, living hand to mouth. I was literally selling my property on a routine basis just to have money for food or rent. And so I had a pretty hard scrabble existence as a staff member, and I was always working and then working at the org and working another job. And so I was feeling the crunch of working a lot and being in a society that I thought, should pay me more and should be more valued around principles like religion and morals and ethics. These were words that meant things to me as a Scientologist a bit more deeply than they did, maybe other people. And I'm not saying conservatives who followed Rush weren't committed to these principles either. I'm just saying that this was my life. This was what I was doing. I was doing Scientology in an effort to try to make the world a better place. I was walking the walk. I wasn't just talking the talk, as far as I was concerned, from my perspective. And Rush Limbaugh was somebody I saw as a bit of a kindred spirit in a way. I know, but this was kind of how I would think at the time. And remember, in 1991, I was, 21 years old. I had no world experience outside of some job work, fast food and retail type work, which I was using to support myself while I was working at the Church of Scientology. So I was low-level staff everywhere I worked. I had, jobs, odd jobs, or jobs that would go from here or there. And so I didn't really have this big, broad, awareness of the big wide world, my place in it, how politics really worked, how DC worked. I didn't understand any of that. So I was all too happy to have a single source of information that was entertaining, funny, and I thought informative. Tell me what to think. And Rush would joke about that, I'm telling, I do all the thinking so you don't have to, or something like that, right? He would joke about that, which was a joke to empower us, to make us feel like we weren't actually getting all of our information from one guy, but we kind of were, right? That's, again, kind of how cults work. They tell you that they're doing the exact opposite of what they're actually doing. I'm not implying Rush Limbaugh is a cult leader. I'm not. What I'm saying, though, is that manipulative technique is utilized by propagandists, and Rush Limbaugh is, if nothing else, absolutely was a propagandist. So as far as how I got out of that mindset, I didn't really for a long time. What happened was Rush's popularity sort of waned, and I was a staff member working in the Church of Scientology. So that was never my main line of thinking or reasoning or my life. It was just something that I used to try to inform myself about how the world worked. And I ended up getting this very skewed, conservative view of the world. And that was what guided a lot of my political thinking in the early 90s. Which was minimal amount of thinking in the first place, you understand, is what I'm trying to say. I wasn't really as politically active or savvy or oriented. I was more Scientology staff oriented. So after the wave passed, I sort of didn't really think too much about Rush. I heard him on the radio every now and again. But the libertarian conservative value set of Scientology and Hubbard was parallel with a lot of the stuff and values that Rush was sort of forwarding. So I maintained that kind of point of view and friendliness towards him until many years later, when I just I think after the RPF and after I'd had enough abuse and some other world experiences, I came back to looking at conservative values and some of the things Rush had talked about. And I just thought, wow, that's kind of mean-spirited and not really, all true. I mean, a lot of what you talked about and predicted never happened, or was just hyperbole, and it was all about personalities and setting people against each other and talking about the DC soap opera and all of that. And I just thought, oh, well, he's supposed to be this really heavy-duty, high-powered political commentator. And this is in the 2000s now. And I wasn't impressed. I just thought, yeah, he just sounds like a big windbag. And it was really just time and distance away from it, I think, that kind of gave me that different perspective about him. And then after I got out of the Sea Org and out of Scientology altogether, I revisited him one more time, and it was just mouth agape. Wow, I used to really think this guy knew what he was talking about. That's amazing. And that's my Rush Limbaugh history, all in a nutshell. But you asked, so there's the answer. And I do not endorse or in any way support anything Rush Limbaugh has said or put out there at this point. So there you go.